Hello everybody, and welcome to my very first official YouTube video to kickstart my channel, and you're watching Japan. Who are the Otaku? The findings in this video are based on a popular book, Otaku, Japan's Database Animal by Hiroki Azuma. It is a fantastic book and I highly recommend you guys to give it a read. Links to where you can get the book are in the description below. First and foremost, what is an otaku? It refers to a general term referring to those who indulge in forms of subculture that are strongly linked to anime, video games, computers, science fiction, special effects, films, anime figurines, and etc. The unique characteristics of otaku culture have often been discussed in comparison with traditional Japanese culture. In a work published in 1989, The Theory of Narrative Consumption by a Japanese cultural critic, Otsuka Eiji, who analyzed the significance of derivative works by drawing on concepts found in kabuki and old-school bunraku puppet theater, it is found that each work conforms to a determined world and idea. In another study by a different Japanese critic, Okada Toshio, titled Introduction to Otaku Studies, he implicitly incorporates his argument, which he asserts that in placing the importance of a piece of work on its idea above its message, otaku sensibilities are directly linked to iki, or the urbanity of Edo culture. The final chapter of Okada's book is titled Otaku are the true heirs of Japanese culture. These ideas that otaku has are often expressed in the form of visual products such as animes, mangas, or video games. Some of the ideas can be easily traced to productions of anime such as Martian Successor Nadeshiko by Sato Tatsuo in 1996 and manga such as Takahashi Rumiko's comic Urusei Yatsura, where the otaku's affection for Japanese images continues to grow even until this very day, to broadly determine otaku's culture in a profound way. This very affection is now considered to be a necessary condition for being an otaku. In this way, otaku culture is connected in various ways to the problems of Japan, where otaku works often take Japan as a subject matter, use numerous Japanese expressions, and are consumed in a thoroughly Japanese fashion. That is why we could see that quite a number of animes have some very symptomatic meaning behind them. One of a good example is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind by Studio Ghibli, where the story is centered around a post-apocalyptic era brought about a nuclear war. Apparently, in the 1980s Japan, fear grew among the people after an incident where 59 workers were exposed to radiation during repairs of a nuclear power plant in Tsuruga. Thus, the fear towards nuclear power can be seen carried on into anime or manga in the 1980s. Another good example is a movie called Akira by Tokyo Movie Shinsha. In the film, we could see bike gangs running rampant in the streets of Neo-Tokyo, representing the late 1980s of Japan, where a biker gang called Boso Zoku in fact existed. That otaku culture, for better or for worse, is a subculture that is only unique to Japan. Really? Azuma seems to disagree, and he argued and thinks that the otaku culture is in fact one of the manifestations in Japan of a grand trend towards postmodernization, of a culture that began in the middle of the 20th century. He does not see the emergence of otaku culture as a uniquely Japanese phenomenon. Although the otaku's culture are often associated with the young, often when otaku is mentioned, we would usually imagine stereotypically a man in his 20s, obese, wears glasses and wears a shirt with anime characters printed on them. But it is in fact the Japanese people born between the late 1950s and the early 1960s were its initial core consumer. Although today, these people are no longer considered to be youth, they formed the very first otaku culture in the Japanese history, and is one of the 3 first generation of otaku. Oh, hold on a minute. 3 generations of otaku already? Who are they? The first generation is said to be centered around those who were born around 1960 and saw the space battleship Yamato by Matsumoto Reiji in 1974, and Mobile Suit Gundam by Tomino Yoshiyuki in 1979 during their teen years, where these group of people showed immense interest in science fiction and B-grade movies. The second generation is made up of those who were born around the year 1970 and during their teens enjoyed a diversified and matured otaku culture produced by the preceding generation. The third generation consists of those who were born around 1980 and were junior high school students at the time of the Neon Genesis Evangelion boom, where this group of people was exposed to the spread of the internet during their teens, and as a result, their main forum for general fan activities has moved to the websites, and their interest ranges from illustrations to computer graphics. It is also noted that the interests of each of these groups differ slightly, where the distribution routes and forms of expression are significantly dissimilar. There could very well be the fourth generation of otaku, with the latest invention brought about some very new changes to the environment, such as the creation of virtual reality. The otaku culture, however, is not as well spread as the J-pop culture. The number of otakus based on the number of specialist magazines, the size of the fanzine market, and the number of the websites registered on the internet is expected to be at least in several 100,000. That's barely 0.001% of the Japanese population. As we all know, the culture itself is not limited to Japan and has also made a great impact on other countries such as Korea, Taiwan, and other Asian countries through otaku's very own platforms such as mangas, animes, and video games. This is evident as texts of the translated version of Cardcaptor Sakura are displayed in Paris bookstores, and modified Ayana Mirai figures made in Hong Kong are listed for a very hefty price at internet auction. Today, it's hard to claim that otaku-like sensibilities are unique only to Japan, as a culture can now be seen all around the world. Shockingly, in his book, Azuma said the otaku culture in reality is originated as a subculture imported from the United States after the World War II, from the 1950s to the 1970s. He then went further and said the history of otaku culture is one of the adaptations of how to domesticate the American culture. The reason for Azuma to come up with such an idea is because he thinks that the existence of anime or special effects never actually existed in Japan before a few decades ago, thus making the otaku culture in his point of view to be somewhat convoluted. He then went on to say that while otaku may very well be heirs to Edo culture, but the two are by no means connected by a continuous line. Between the otaku and Japan lies the United States. For example, the method of animation used in the old days, called the full animation, where a rate of 8 drawings per second were used, was a method that was originally invented by the Americans. A similar method, called the limited animation, was then developed by Japan. What could this mean? This would mean that modern anime would have never existed without the help of the United States, and it is the subculture brought by the United States was what gave birth to the otaku culture that we all know today. Astonishingly, Azuma also mentioned that the finding amounts to more than a mere account of a subculture, and that it involves reflection on the issues of Japan's inability to come to terms with war defeat, of the American cultural invasion of Japan, and of the distorted conditions brought about through modernization and post-modernization. He then stressed that the study has a deep connection to political and ideological issues that Japan faced at the time. Of course, many did not come to like what he said. But have you ever wondered why the term otaku is often associated with negative meanings? In fact, the term was not branded as a negative term prior to the late 1990s. The society started to have a negative image of otaku when an otaku named Miyazaki Satomu carried out the kidnapping, rape, and murder of several young girls in Japan. After the incident, the term otaku has been plagued. Originally, the term itself is used to refer to the supporters of a new subculture forming in Japan in the 1970s. However, the incident that took place between 1988 and 1989 by Miyazaki Tsutomu made the term otaku to be widely known by the Japanese, and therefore, the term otaku is often associated with people being antisocial and individuals who possess perverted personality traits. The further degradation of the term is also caused by the media, where one magazine was quoted as saying otakus are people without basic human communication skills, who often withdraw into their world. Till this very day, the general perception remains. The otaku stand came under heavy attack by the people and the mass media alike, but the incident caused an opposite reaction from the otakus themselves. In 1990s, with the widespread of the negative connotations to the term otaku, a generation of otaku, which I assume is the third generation of otaku, have come to use the term in a very positive light, in the wake of being more conscious of their very own identity as an otaku. However, with the release of the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion by Anno Hideaki, the otaku culture started to gain wide attention. When the issues with otaku began to become more and more widespread, Okada Toshio, who published a study called An Introduction to Otaku Studies, mentioned earlier in our video, came to question the way in which otaku had become a derogatory term. He then redefined the term as those who possess an evolved vision or a new type of person who is responsive to the cultural conditions of a highly consumerist society. The divide that formed out of the Miyazaki incident made it difficult for people to speak objectively and candidly about otaku culture until the end of the 1990s. Apart from that, the voices of the authority within the mass media and public discussion still hold a strong loathing for otaku behavior. And the debate on otaku culture often faces resistance, preempting any meaningful discussion. On the other hand, otakus that display anti-authoritarianism distrust any method that is not otaku-like, and does not welcome any discussion on anime and video games initiated by anyone other than an otaku. There are people who refuse to even recognize otaku, while others believe only a designated group possesses the right to speak about them. Azuma also said that he came under heavy criticism for writing a book about the otaku, and stated that it has been extremely difficult to take a position that does not adhere to either of these stances. What do you think? Do you agree with Azuma's idea of otaku? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, do give the thumbs up and make sure to subscribe. See ya!